Welcome to the One Choice Podcast. I am your host, Tony Hoffman. Today, we are going to talk about creating momentum from ground zero. Before we get into that topic, guys, I need you to like and subscribe to the podcast. I know a lot of you guys in the beginning are going to be listening to me and you know me. If you know me, do me a favor. Like and subscribe to the podcast. The ranking system with iTunes and Spotify, it all depends on likes, it all depends on subscribing, it all depends on reviews. So I need your guys' help to kickstart this podcast, which in reality is going to be a slow momentum building process, which is exactly why I'm talking about building momentum from ground zero today. Is because something like my podcast is at ground zero. This is my first episode that is going to be the inspirational segment called One Choice. The reason for One Choice is because the backbone of my speaking is one choice can change the rest of your life. It can change it in a negative direction, and it can also change it in a positive direction. And I've lived those moments where one choice has changed the rest of my life. So today's segment is One Choice. I want you guys to think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish right now in your life. Maybe you're getting ready to do something. Maybe you're changing yourself, changing some things about yourself, or you're going through something where you want to do something big. And for me, what that moment was for me was when I was in prison. I had literally found myself in a prison cell due to a drug addiction that had nearly killed me, a heroin addiction. I was also addicted to meth and cocaine and other drugs, but the main drug of choice that I was using was heroin and painkillers, prescription painkillers, and committed a home invasion robbery. And the culmination of my choices in addiction now have me in a prison cell. And while I'm in a prison cell, I recognize that where I'm at is not where I should be, but it's also not where I want to be. So whatever this is, wherever ground zero is in your life right now, you know that it's not where you want to be or where you should be. But how do you get from not being where you don't want to be or not being where you should be to where you want to be or to where you see what you want to be happening? And that process is what I'm going to lay out. Because the first thing you've got to do is you've got to be able to visualize what it is that you want to be, where it is you want to go. If you can't see in your mind or you cannot see in your thoughts where you're going or what you want to be, it's never going to happen. I'm going to tell you that again. If you can't see where you want to go or what you want to be, it's never going to happen. I'm not talking about getting on Instagram and scrolling across and being like, oh God, I want the car that guy has. You're not going to get that car by saying, I want that car. You're going to get that car by having a greater vision of what is going to bring things like that car to you. But I will say this, if your goal to start something off is to get a car, chances are it's never going to happen. If your goal to changing yourself is to get the girl that you always wanted, you may not get the girl that you always wanted. And that's because of your intentions, which brings me to the other point. You have to be able to visualize where you want to go and what you want to be. And number two, you have to have an intention that is a greater intention. It's not to get rich. It's not to get the girl. It's not to get the house. It's to become a better you or help people. When you have a desire with a good intention, and these words come from the great Deepak Chopra from the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. I've read very few books in my life. The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success is one book that I've read. If you want a very short read that's practical, spiritual principles on becoming an affluent energy that attracts things and accomplishes things, definitely read Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, because a desire with good intention is right on target. You have to have a desire with good intention, and good intention is not getting rich. Good intention is not getting the girl. Good intention is becoming the best you and helping others along the way. Once you line out your intentions, once you know where you want to go, you have to understand that if you want to create momentum from ground zero, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. Nobody's going to come and hand you the big parts of your vision that's going to motivate you. If you don't develop the discipline in that moment for whatever task it is, and let me tell you what that moment was for me and the task that came with it. I was in a prison cell at Wasco State Prison. I told myself, when I get out of here, I'm going to do 4 things. I'm going to become a professional athlete. I'm going to start a nonprofit organization called the Free Will Project that uses action sports for kids. I'm going to go to the Olympics, and I'm going to become a public speaker. The first goal that I had was to become a professional athlete, and I needed to start doing the work. For me, the work was working out every single day. I needed to become physically fit. Even though I couldn't ride my bike for 2 years, I had to do what I had to do in there for 2 years, so when I got out, I was prepared. See, what we do when we want this vision or we start setting out for this stuff, we tell ourselves when we get to X, Y, and Z, then we'll be motivated. When we get to X, Y, and Z, then we'll up our discipline. When in actuality, you don't realize that you're canceling out the energy to create the momentum by not doing the small things first. The small things first for me was push-ups in a prison cell. The small things for me first was doing squats in a prison cell. A prison cell is 8 foot by 12 foot. It's the last place that anybody's trying to create energy and be disciplined for something that they're not going to be able to do for 2 years. Wherever you're at right now, I can guarantee you it's a situation, like I said, where you don't want to be. And where you don't want to be is there's a small amount of work on very small things that you have to master before you can graduate to the next level. Momentum is developed many levels after ground zero. Many levels after ground zero. And so once you get onto the work, you start doing the work. And once you start doing the work, you start developing the habits. And once you start developing the habits, you start developing a routine. The routine is what carries you into the momentum. You cannot have a routine without consistency. You cannot have a routine without consistency. That means it doesn't matter how you feel today. It doesn't matter what happened to you yesterday. It doesn't matter what's on the calendar for tomorrow that's scaring the shit out of you. You have to do what you need to do today. It does not matter. It doesn't matter how hot it is. It doesn't matter how cold it is. You get the point. You cannot create consistency or a routine without consistency. Every single day that I was in prison, I told myself I can't take a day off. Right now, I'm setting the tone for who I'm going to be in 2 years. See, what I was doing was focusing on the vision of where I wanted to be and who I wanted to become. Those are what carried me through the days that I didn't feel good. Those were the things that pushed me when everything was pushing against me. Those were the things that allowed me to be in prison and not feel like I was in prison. I get where you're at in your life right now. I get that you don't feel that great. I get that your situation isn't the most ideal, but I've been there. And I know the keys to breaking through that and creating momentum. Once you have your routine in place, you have to understand the next step, and that is you're going to make mistakes. You will make mistakes, and you will make them over and over again, but you have to realize that the mistakes that you make are the teachers that teach you how to remold your approach and come back better. Momentum does not happen until the person has executed at a level of proficiency that warrants momentum. In other words, you're going to make mistakes, but you adjust from those mistakes and you come back and you try again. And you make another mistake and you make more adjustments and you try again. I know when I got out and I had become my professional athlete, started my nonprofit organization, Started public speaking. The public speaking was probably the hardest of the tasks that I've done of the 4 goals that I had created when I was in prison. And that was because I was working to become a nationally renowned speaker in Fresno, California. The middle of California where nothing happens, the middle of California that nobody knows about, the place in the world that nobody's thinking about. And here's a kid who was homeless from a heroin addiction, went to prisons, gotten out, became a professional athlete, started a nonprofit organization for kids, and he wants to tell the world about it. How do you do that? I had no clue. I had no idea how I was going to do it. But here's what I knew. I knew that I had a passion to help people. I knew that I had a passion to help people. And that meant that when I started my journey from ground zero, I didn't care about money. I didn't care what people thought about my dream. I didn't care about anything that was going on outside of the vision of wanting to help people. And so I pushed and I pushed and I started to get some recognition, but people wouldn't pay me. I wasn't getting thousands of dollars a speech. I wasn't getting invited by Oklahoma University's football team, Creighton University, San Diego State University, San Diego University, Menard Corporation. I wasn't getting invited by these big names to come and speak for thousands of dollars. I couldn't get somebody to give me $50 for gas money just to show up and share my story. I didn't care. It was passion. I wanted to help. So I pushed forward. But then when I got recognized by an agency that I could be somebody that potentially could be a nationally renowned speaker, I was leveling up. I created momentum locally. Understand that momentum works in phases. You have small phases of momentum that build up into creating the great momentum that you're dreaming. I don't care if it's about a character you're trying to develop into. I don't care if it's something in your job. I don't care if it's something with your family. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's something for your sports. Momentum comes in phases. The original phase for me was locally. Then I got introduced to the national level, and I literally had no idea what to do. They said, well, how do you generate jobs? I said, I don't know. How am I supposed to, they said, well, you're supposed to bring us the leads and then we'll help you. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense to me because how do I generate the leads? I went from building momentum locally and getting a little bit of money for a speech, $200 if I was lucky, to now I'm at a new level of ground zero and I'm now trying to create momentum on a national level. Again, what saw me through all of the growing pains that I went through was passion, people. You have to have passion. And this is where your desire with good intention is so important because if you do not have the right intentions for what it is that you're trying to do, trust me, when these moments come, you will quit. When these moments come, you will turn your back and you will go somewhere else and you will try and get the instant reward. You will try and get the instant gratification because originally the foundations of what it was that you said you wanted to do or what it was that you said you wanted to be was not built on good intentions with passion. But it was passion that saw me through what I was doing because in 2015, as I was learning what it takes to be a nationally renowned speaker, somebody that people recognize, somebody that thousands of people follow on Instagram, growing every year, somebody that Oklahoma University's football team wants to contact and bring in to speak to their team, there were things that I had to learn. There were mistakes that I had to make. And in 2015, I did not speak one time. 3 years ago, I did not speak one time. I wanted to quit because in my mind, it just wasn't working out. But also in my mind, I believed that my message was great. I believed in my ability. I believed that people would listen to my story because every time I did get to speak, people were awed by my story. People were motivated by my story. It was changing people's lives. So I focused on what I could do to get better. I needed to make some changes with my website. I needed to make some changes about my visibility. I needed to make some changes about my delivery. I needed to make some changes in how I communicated to the potential clients that were looking me up. And as I got better at executing with precision on the vision, the momentum started. The momentum that I'm seeing now is not the momentum that I want. The momentum I'm seeing now is I'm getting a taste of it. The momentum that I'm getting now is kind of like when you throw a Sour Patch Kid in your mouth and you get that real sour taste at first and you're kind of like, ooh. And then the second you start to get that sweet part of the Sour Patch Kid, you're like, yes, this is why I'm eating this candy in the first place. That's what's happening in my life right now. That's what's happening in my inbox every single day when large corporations, football teams, schools want me to come in and speak to their programs. It's not where I want to be yet, but it's heading where I want to go. And I'm going to make mistakes along the way. And you're going to make mistakes along the way. I guarantee it. You're going to make mistakes. I guarantee it. And your momentum is going to come in phases. And you have to recognize when the tide is rolling in, your momentum is creating. When the tide is rolling out, you're going through a new challenge and a new set of tests to develop a new set of skills to bring the tide back in, but with bigger waves. It requires the footwork. It requires the footwork. I don't expect a lot of people to be listening to this first podcast. Come on, I've listened to people that have millions of viewers, and they said when their podcast started, it was crickets. It's going to be crickets. My mom and dad are listening right now. My co-host is listening right now. My girlfriend's going to be listening. Some of my best friends are going to be listening. But how many random people are actually going to be listening to the One Choice Radio podcast? Not that many. But ask me if I give a shit right now how many people are listening to this podcast. It's not about how many listeners. It's about the message. I'm going to do the work and I'm going to put the message into the universe. And the more that I consistently do this and create a routine, I will begin to create momentum where my message gets heard and people want to come to where the message is being sent. And that is universal. It doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish in your life. The rules I just spoke are universal. It works in your personal life. It works in your business life. It works in your family life. It works in your hobby life. But the choice is yours. What are you willing to do today to change the rest of your life? Maybe it's not listening to the music station that you think's messing with your mind. Maybe it's hiring the therapist so you can understand the things that you're doing that are creating tension in your relationship. Maybe it's putting your ego aside and listening to the boss that you think is an asshole and maybe applying some of the things that that person is saying so you can be a better leader in the work field. I don't know what it is, but I know this. You got to start somewhere.